Right now, there are thousands of commercial airplanes in the sky. We live in a highly connected age where global aviation networks track every single one of those flights simultaneously with pinpoint accuracy. That was the expectation on the morning of March 8, 2014, when a Boeing 777 operating as Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 took off from Kuala Lumpur. It was carrying 239 people, bound for Beijing. Everything about the departure was routine. The aircraft was commanded by Captain Zahari Ahmed Shah and First Officer Fariq Hamid, both highly experienced pilots, and their radio traffic with the ground was completely normal. At 1:19 a.m., the plane reached the edge of Malaysian airspace. It entered a jurisdictional no-man's land over the South China Sea, just before it was scheduled to check in with Vietnamese air traffic control. To understand how a plane can vanish, look at this diagram of a secondary radar system. Commercial planes carry a device called a transponder. It acts as a digital identity beacon. When a ground tower pings the aircraft, the transponder instantly beams back a data packet containing the plane's ID, speed, and altitude. 2 minutes after their final radio sign-off, Flight 370's transponder abruptly goes dark. The data feed is cut. The evaporation of a 300-ton aircraft from civilian screens reveals a structural dependency in modern aviation. For air traffic control, the ability to see a plane often relies on the plane's own equipment agreeing to be seen. Initial rescue efforts focused entirely on the South China Sea, right where the civilian transponder stopped broadcasting. But a new piece of data soon forced investigators to pivot. This is a military primary radar screen. Unlike civilian tracking, primary radar does not require an airplane to actively broadcast its data. Instead, it physically bounces massive radio waves off the metal hull of an aircraft to determine its location. When investigators reviewed the Malaysian military's primary radar, they saw that MH370 didn't explode in the South China Sea. Instead, the plane executed a sharp U-turn, cutting straight back across the Malaysian peninsula. The aircraft then flew northwest, traveling up the Strait of Malacca until it completely leaves military radar range. A sudden mid-air explosion or a catastrophic structural failure leaves a scattered debris field and ends the flight path immediately. Executing tight turns and navigating a specific evasive route requires the aircraft's aerodynamics to be fully intact. The military radar captures a flight that remains stable and navigable for over an hour after disappearing from civilian view. This wasn't a falling wreck. It was a sustained flight, maintained through deliberate manual inputs. Even with the transponder turned off, a separate automated communication unit on the plane was still quietly connecting with a deep space satellite. Look at this diagram showing how these satellite handshakes work. It's essentially an hourly automated system check. An Inmarsat satellite pings the aircraft, and the plane's hardware bounces a weak reflection back to space. Investigators use the microsecond time delays of these pings to determine how long the signal took to return. By calculating the speed of the radio wave, they could measure the distance between the plane and the satellite, projecting that distance as a massive glowing ring on the Earth's surface. As the plane kept flying, it sent sequential hourly pings. Mathematical deductions from those time delays plotted 7 massive arcs across the globe. The final ping location, the 7th arc, pinpointed the aircraft deep in the remote southern Indian Ocean. It had flown for hours in the exact opposite direction of its intended route. This specific trajectory supports 2 dominant theories. Either an oxygen-deprived crew succumbed to hypoxia, leaving a ghost flight to cruise on autopilot until it ran out of fuel, or someone intentionally flew the plane manually into the most remote part of the ocean. Physical confirmation of this mathematical model arrived years later. A wing component known as a flaperon washed up on the beaches of Reunion Island, thousands of miles away from the original search zone, matching ocean drift models from the 7th arc. The physical debris aligns with the calculated search zone, confirming that the satellite model accurately mapped the plane's path. It tells us where the flight ended, but provides no insight into the actions inside the cockpit. The official multi-million-dollar underwater searches were eventually suspended. Without a fuselage or flight recorders, the families of the 239 passengers were left without closure. Recently, an aerospace engineer proposed a new method to search the 7th arc using WSPRnet, a global amateur radio wave tracking technology. WSPRnet tracks the constant hum of radio signals crossing the planet. When a large metal object, like a commercial jet, passes through these signals, it creates measurable disturbances, scattering the waves. Theoretically, parsing this historical data could pinpoint the plane's final resting place on the seventh arc. Finding it requires exploring a terrifying geography. The suspected crash zone is a treacherous landscape of pitch-black trenches, deep ocean cliffs, and jagged underwater volcanoes. MH370 remains a physical gap in our global records. It is a reminder that even with vast satellite coverage and radio networks, a 200-foot machine can still rest in a part of the world we simply haven't looked at.